The arrival of the inevitable. The grand chamber of the celestial Concordat station hung suspended in the void, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of distant stars as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for what promised to be the final days of a war that had raged for 17 years. The Alliance of Free Worlds, a coalition of 14 sentient species, had been pushed to the brink of collapse by the relentless expansion of the hegemony, a militaristic empire composed of genetically modified Vecteri and their subjugated client races. Ambassador Lyra Voss adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform as she studied the faces of her counterparts. As the sole human representative at the talks, she carried the weight of Earth's interests, though humanity remained a minor player in galactic politics. The Terran Union had joined the Alliance only 4 years ago, after hegemony scout ships had been detected near Sol's outer reaches. The terms are non-negotiable, Grand Marshal Ketval announced, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's ambient lighting. The Vecteri leader's compound eyes reflected no emotion as he continued. The Alliance will surrender all disputed territories, disarm its military forces, and accept hegemony oversight of all interstellar trade routes. First Speaker Ilorian of the Athraxians, the most powerful members of the Alliance, rustled her feathered crest in distress. These are not terms of peace, Marshal Ketval. They are terms of surrender. They are terms of reality. The Vecteri responded coldly. Your forces are broken. Your supply lines are severed. 3 of your core worlds are under blockade. The Alliance has fought admirably, but the outcome was never in doubt. Lyra studied the holographic battle map floating at the center of the chamber. The Marshal wasn't wrong. Alliance territory had contracted by nearly 60% over the past 2 years alone. The hegemony's biological warships were ruthlessly efficient, adaptable to almost any combat situation, and seemingly inexhaustible. The Terran Union cannot accept these terms, Lyra stated, her voice clear and measured. The other ambassadors turned toward her with expressions ranging from surprise to irritation. Humanity was the newest and militarily weakest member of the Alliance. Their opinions carried little weight. With respect, Ambassador Voss, First Speaker Ilorian said gently, "The time for defiance has passed. We must secure the survival of our peoples, even at great cost. And what guarantee do we have that the hegemony will honor even these harsh terms?" Lyra challenged, looking directly at Ketval. Your forces have committed documented atrocities on 17 worlds. You've weaponized entire ecosystems and collapsed planetary biospheres. The historical record suggests your people consider treaties merely temporary conveniences. Ketval's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The human species speaks of historical records. You who have barely achieved interstellar capability. Your kind is still new to the stars. Ambassador, perhaps this explains your naivete. Before Lyra could respond, an aide approached her with urgent whispers. Her expression remained carefully neutral, but her pulse quickened. "We will recess for 3 hours," announced the neutral arbiter, a member of the ancient mithril species. Representatives are reminded that all communication with military forces is prohibited during peace negotiations. As the chamber emptied, Lyra quickly made her way to her private communication suite. Once secured behind privacy fields, she activated her quantum entanglement communicator, a piece of technology the Alliance had been astonished to discover humans possessed. "This is Ambassador Voss. Confirm reports immediately." The face of Admiral Zhang appeared on the secure channel. "Confirmed, Ambassador. The UES Inevitable has entered the Concordat system. Captain Chen is requesting diplomatic clearance." Lyra closed her eyes briefly. The Inevitable was supposed to remain at the Sol defensive perimeter. Who authorized this deployment? That's complicated. Ambassador, the Admiral's discomfort was visible. Captain Chen invoked Directive 7. "Emergency intervention without Council approval," Lyra muttered. "On what grounds?" "Intelligence suggests the hegemony is staging forces for a final push against remaining Alliance core worlds." They're using the peace talks as cover to reposition their fleet. Lyra's mind raced through the implications. Has the hegemony detected the inevitable yet? Unknown. The vessel is operating under full stealth protocols, but maintaining such measures is difficult in system. Put me through to Captain Chen immediately. The screen shifted to reveal Captain Maya Chen, her angular features set in the determined expression Lyra remembered well from their academy days. The two had once been close friends before their paths diverged. Lyra to diplomacy, Maya to the newly formed Terran Defense Force. Ambassador, Maya acknowledged with a slight nod. Captain, you are jeopardizing critical peace negotiations. The inevitable must withdraw immediately. With respect, Ambassador, these aren't peace negotiations. They're surrender proceedings. Maya's voice was calm but unyielding. The hegemony is playing for time while they prepare to eliminate the remaining Alliance resistance. That's speculation. It's confirmed intelligence. Maya interrupted, transmitting data to Lyra's terminal. 3 hegemony brood carriers have detached from their main fleet. They're on approach vectors to Athrax Prime, Mendara, and Lygos, the last strongholds of Alliance resistance. Once those worlds fall, Earth will be exposed. Lyra studied the intelligence data with growing alarm. Even if this is true, what do you expect to accomplish? The inevitable is a formidable vessel, but it's one ship against the hegemony armada. Maya's lips curved into the hint of a smile. The inevitable isn't quite like other ships, Lyra. You know that. We've kept our most advanced technologies shielded from Alliance scanning. Neither side knows what we're truly capable of. You're considering direct military intervention, Lyra realized, alarm coloring her voice. That would violate our diplomatic standing and could trigger immediate hostilities against Earth. Sometimes the board needs to be reset before a new game can begin, Maya replied. I'm not asking for permission, Ambassador. I'm giving you advance warning as a courtesy. The inevitable will engage hegemony forces within the hour. Before Lyra could object further, the transmission ended. She sat back, mind racing through contingencies. The Terran Union Council had been clear. Maintain neutrality while securing Alliance protection. Direct military intervention was explicitly forbidden. Yet as she reviewed the intelligence Maya had provided, a cold realization settled in her stomach. The hegemony had no intention of honoring any peace. Their forces were already moving to deliver a killing blow. When the diplomatic session resumed, Lyra entered with renewed purpose. The hegemony representatives were already seated, their postures radiating confidence. The Alliance delegates looked defeated, preparing to sign away their freedom. Before we continue, Lyra announced, the Terran Union wishes to present new information relevant to these proceedings. First speaker Elorian looked at her with concern. Ambassador Voss, the terms have been. A commotion at the entrance interrupted her as a junior Vectari officer rushed in, chittering urgently to Grand Marshal Ketval. The Marshal's compound eyes flashed with what might have been surprise or alarm. It seems, Ketval said, rising to his full imposing height, that our negotiations are being interrupted by the arrival of a human warship in this neutral system, a direct violation of diplomatic protocols. Lyra met his gaze steadily. Just as the positioning of hegemony brood carriers for strikes against Alliance core worlds during peace negotiations is a violation, Marshal. Murmurs spread through the Alliance representatives. A desperate accusation, Ketval dismissed. Your lone vessel poses no threat to the hegemony. If this is some primitive attempt at strengthening your negotiating position. The chamber's lights flickered momentarily as a distant vibration shuddered through the station. The holographic display at the center of the room activated automatically, showing real-time tactical data from around the system. A single human vessel, sleek, angular, and midnight black, moved with impossible speed toward a cluster of hegemony ships. The vessel's designation appeared in Alliance Standard, UES-INEVITA-BULL. What is the meaning of this? Demanded the neutral arbiter, their luminescent tendrils flaring with agitation. Before anyone could respond, The tactical display showed the inevitable accelerating to velocities that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. It closed with the nearest hegemony cruiser in seconds. What happened next silenced every being in the chamber. The inevitable didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, the space around the hegemony vessels seemed to distort and compress. 3 hegemony ships, each many times the size of the human vessel, were suddenly crushed as though gravity itself had become a weapon. They imploded into dense masses of twisted biomatter and metal. "Impossible," whispered one of the Alliance scientists present. "They'd weaponize space-time itself." The remaining hegemony vessels responded, organic pods launching toward the inevitable, with accelerations that would have liquefied most biological crews. The human ship did not evade. Instead, the weapons simply ceased to exist as they entered a perimeter around the vessel. "As you can see," Lyra said into the stunned silence, "humanity brings certain unique perspectives to warfare. Captain Chen is currently demonstrating only a fraction of the inevitable's capabilities." She turned to face the Alliance representatives. "The Terran Union did not join this alliance to witness its surrender. We joined to help secure peace. Real peace, not capitulation." Grand Marshal Ketval's mandibles clacked furiously. "This changes nothing. The hegemony controls thousands of worlds. Your single vessel, however advanced, cannot stand against our combined might." "Perhaps not," Lyra agreed. "But the inevitable is just the first of its class. Earth's shipyards are producing more as we speak." This was, strictly speaking, a monumental bluff. The inevitable was a technological marvel, but Earth had strained its resources to breaking point just to build this prototype. However, the hegemony had no way of knowing that. "I propose," Lyra continued, "that we discuss more equitable terms, ones that recognize the current military reality, rather than the one that hegemony had anticipated." On the tactical display, the inevitable continued its systematic dismantling of the hegemony force. No ship lasted more than seconds once targeted. It moved with precision that suggested its targeting systems were operating on principles beyond conventional sensing technology. First Speaker Ilorian looked at Lyra with new respect, and perhaps a touch of fear. "It seems, Ambassador Voss, that humanity has been somewhat modest about its capabilities." "We're a young species," Lyra replied with a small smile. "But we learn quickly." As the inevitable completed its devastation of the hegemony force, without a single loss of life aboard the human vessel, Lyra knew the real work was just beginning. The galactic balance of power had shifted dramatically, and navigating the aftermath would require all her diplomatic skill. But for the first time since the war began, there was hope for something better than surrender. The edge of diplomacy. The diplomatic chamber had transformed overnight. Where once the Alliance representatives had sat in resigned defeat, they now watched the hegemony delegation with renewed confidence. Grand Marshal Ketval's compound eyes gleamed with barely suppressed rage as he reviewed the revised treaty terms. "These conditions are unacceptable," he hissed, mandibles clicking rapidly. "The hegemony does not surrender territory it has rightfully conquered." Ambassador Lyra Voss remained composed, though she hadn't slept in nearly 36 hours. The demonstration of the inevitable's capabilities had thrown the negotiations into chaos, requiring marathon sessions to prevent the talks from collapsing entirely. "These aren't surrender terms, Marshal," she replied evenly. "They're a recognition of new realities. The hegemony withdraws from contested systems, the Alliance maintains its core territories, and a demilitarized zone is established between them. Both sides retain their sovereignty." First Speaker Ilorian of the Athraxians nodded in agreement, her feathered crest now held high. "The Alliance is prepared to recognize hegemony claims to territories it held before the war began. That is more than generous given recent developments." On the holographic display dominating the center of the chamber, the UES Inevitable maintained its position at the edge of the system. The vessel had not fired a weapon since its initial engagement, but its presence was a constant reminder of humanity's unexpected intervention. You expect us to retreat based on the actions of a single vessel? Ketval demanded. The hegemony has conquered 1,000 worlds. We have broken empires far more advanced than your primitive human civilization. Lyra allowed a thin smile. Perhaps, but none of those empires developed gravity manipulation technology, did they? Or localized temporal displacement fields. She was careful not to reveal which capabilities were real and which were still theoretical. Let the hegemony intelligence services exhaust themselves trying to separate fact from speculation. A subtle vibration ran through the station, causing the lights to flicker momentarily. Concern flashed across several faces. Another demonstration from your warship, Ambassador? Ketval asked coldly. Before Lyra could respond, her secure communicator signaled an urgent message. She glanced down at the display and felt her blood run cold. This session is adjourned for 1 hour, announced the neutral arbiter, sensing the sudden tension. As the chamber cleared, Lyra hurried to her private quarters and activated the quantum communicator. Captain Maya Chen's face appeared, her expression grim. We've detected a hegemony battle group entering the system, Maya reported without preamble. 17 capital ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. They dropped out of hyperspace at the system edge, beyond our immediate engagement range. Lyra's mind raced. The hegemony is calling our bluff. It's worse than that, Maya said. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy signatures. They'd brought planet killers. Lyra felt a chill run through her. Planet killers were outlawed by every civilized species in the galaxy, weapons capable of rendering worlds uninhabitable in minutes. The hegemony had used them only once before, against a species that had since become extinct. They're planning to attack the station, Lyra realized. Eliminate all the Alliance leadership in one strike, then launch a final offensive against the weakened coalition. Maya nodded grimly. The inevitable can intercept the battle group, but against those numbers, she left the implication hanging. You said the inevitable had capabilities we haven't revealed, Lyra pressed. What exactly can your ship do against a force that size? Maya's expression hardened. We have one option, but it's untested at this scale. The causality drive. Lyra inhaled sharply. The causality drive was theoretical technology. The ability to selectively manipulate cause and effect within a localized field. If successful, it could neutralize enemy weapons by preventing the cause from creating the effect. If it failed, the physics aren't stable beyond laboratory conditions, Lyra said. You could tear a hole in space-time itself. Better that than allowing the hegemony to destroy the station and everyone on it, Maya countered. I need your authorization, Ambassador. Lyra closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her decision was made. Do what you must, Captain, but try to minimize casualties. Maya's expression softened slightly. Always the diplomat. The communication ended. When Lyra returned to the chamber, she found the hegemony delegation looking supremely confident. Marshal Ketval's posture had completely changed. He sat erect, mandibles relaxed in the vectary expression of satisfaction. The Alliance has 1 hour to accept our original terms, he announced without preamble. Unconditional surrender, disarmament, and integration into the hegemony as protected territories. First Speaker Ilorian looked to Lyra with concern. What has happened? The Marshal has received reinforcements, Lyra explained calmly. A battle group including 3 dreadnoughts and several planet killers. Gasps echoed around the chamber. Planet killers are forbidden by Galactic Convention. The neutral arbiter protested, their luminescent tendrils flaring in alarm. Conventions apply to the victorious, Ketval responded dismissively. The defeated accept the terms they are given. The holographic display updated to show the approaching hegemony force, a massive array of biomechanical vessels moving in perfect formation toward the station. Your impressive human vessel now faces the full might of a hegemony battle group. Ketval continued, his compound eyes fixed on Lyra. A fascinating technological curiosity, but ultimately irrelevant against our numbers. Lyra studied the tactical display, noting the Inevitable's position. The human vessel was not retreating. Instead, it appeared to be making adjustments to its energy configuration, readings flickering in patterns that confused the station's sensors. Perhaps, Lyra answered carefully. The Marshal would be interested in one final demonstration before we consider these terms. The hegemony leader's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. By all means, Ambassador. Show us what one vessel can do against 17. On the display, the Inevitable accelerated toward the hegemony formation. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The human ship was dwarfed by the massive hegemony dreadnoughts, each nearly 20 times its size. Then, reality itself seemed to stutter around the human vessel. The Inevitable appeared to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, its form blurring as if viewed through rippling water. The effect spread outward, enveloping the lead hegemony vessels. Where it touched, strange phenomena occurred. Weapons fired, but their energy dissipated harmlessly. Engines flared, but ships didn't move. Communication signals transmitted, but carried no data. What is this? Ketval demanded, his confident posture dissolving. Causality disruption, Lyra explained, though in truth she understood only the basics of the technology. Your ships still exist, but the normal chain of cause and effect has been rearranged within that field. The effect continued to spread, encompassing all 17 hegemony vessels. None could fire their weapons effectively. None could maneuver. None could communicate. They were effectively neutralized without a single direct attack. Impossible, whispered one of the hegemony scientists. No species has mastered quantum causality manipulation at this scale. And yet, Lyra gestured to the display. The evidence suggests otherwise. The station's sensors registered massive energy fluctuations within the field. The Inevitable itself appeared to be struggling to maintain control, its power systems operating beyond design parameters. If the ship failed, the collapsing causality field could potentially destroy everything within its radius, including the human vessel. Lyra activated her secure communicator. Captain Chin, status report. Maya's voice came through strained, background noises suggesting significant stress on the ship's systems. Field is stable but requires constant adjustment. We can maintain it for approximately 20 minutes before critical overload. Can you release the ships without detonating their weapon systems? Affirmative. We can selectively restore normal causality. But Ambassador, the moment we do, they'll attack. Lyra turned to face Grand Marshal Ketval. Your battle group has been neutralized, Marshal. They exist now in a state where causality itself has been suspended. If the field collapses catastrophically, they will be destroyed. If it's lowered gracefully, they can be restored, if you agree to our terms. The Vectari leader's compound eyes fixed on her with cold calculation. You destroy 17 vessels, and all aboard them. I would prefer not to, Lyra answered honestly. Humanity doesn't seek the annihilation of the Vectari or any species. We seek a stable peace where all can exist without dominance or subjugation. The choice is yours, Marshal. For several long moments, the chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the holographic display showing the frozen hegemony fleet. You've concealed much from the galaxy, Ketval finally said, his tone unreadable. As have you, Lyra countered. Our intelligence suggests the hegemony has been developing biological weapons designed specifically for each Alliance species. Targeted extinction is your goal, not merely conquest. The accusation hung in the air. Several Alliance representatives looked ill. Such weapons would violate the most fundamental principles of galactic civilization. The hegemony seeks order, Ketval replied, neither confirming nor denying the allegation. Some species resist integration despite its benefits, and some species resist extinction despite its efficiency, Lyra responded. Now, shall we discuss terms that recognize both our capabilities, or shall we demonstrate whose approach to warfare is ultimately more effective? On the display, the Inevitable's energy readings were becoming increasingly unstable. Maintaining the causality field was straining the ship beyond its limits. Time was running short. Ketval's antennae quivered as he performed complex calculations. Release our vessels unharmed, and the hegemony will consider revised terms. Lyra shook her head. Not good enough, Marshal. The hegemony will withdraw to pre-war boundaries, dismantle all biological weapons programs, and accept independent verification protocols. In exchange, the Alliance will not pursue reparations for worlds damaged during the conflict, and humanity will share certain non-military technologies that may benefit all species. You dictate terms from a position of temporary advantage. Ketval objected. I offer a path that doesn't end with your battle group imploding when my captain can no longer maintain the field, Lyra corrected. The inevitable can only sustain this state for another 10 minutes. Choose quickly, Marshal. The hegemony leader's compound eyes fixed on the display where his mighty vessels hung helpless. Finally, his mandibles clicked in the vectary gesture of reluctant acceptance. The hegemony accepts these preliminary terms, pending full negotiation of the final treaty. Lyra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Captain Chen, initiate controlled release of the hegemony vessels, weapons systems excluded. On the display, the strange rippling effect began to recede from the hegemony ships. One by one, they regained mobility, though their weapons remained inactive. A demonstration of good faith, Lyra explained. Their propulsion and life support are restored, but offensive capabilities remain neutralized until the treaties are formalized. The neutral arbiter's tendrils waved in something like relief. This council will recess for 12 hours to allow all parties to consult with their governments regarding these unprecedented developments. As the chamber emptied, First Speaker Ilorian approached Lyra privately. That was remarkable diplomacy, Ambassador Voss. Sometimes the best diplomacy requires a convincing alternative to peace, Lyra replied with a tired smile. Your species is full of surprises, the Athraxian observed. The Alliance believed we were accepting a junior partner when humanity joined. It seems we underestimated you considerably. Humanity has spent its history preparing for threats we could only imagine, Lyra explained. We developed technologies others considered impossible or impractical because we had no choice. We had to innovate or perish. And the inevitable. Are there truly more such vessels under construction? Lyra maintained her diplomatic expression. That information remains classified, Speaker, but rest assured, humanity is committed to the Alliance and the peace we're building. As she returned to her quarters, Lyra finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion of the past days. The gamble had paid off, barely. The inevitable had pushed experimental technology to its breaking point, and the bluff about Earth's military production would only hold until hegemony intelligence discovered the truth. But they had bought time. Time for the Alliance to recover, time for Earth to actually develop the fleet it claimed to have, time for a lasting peace to take root. Her secure communicator activated with a message from Captain Chen. Field collapsed safely. All hegemony vessels neutralized without casualties. Inevitable sustained significant damage to primary systems, requesting permission to dock for repairs. Lyra smiled. Sometimes peace required the credible threat of war, and sometimes it required friends willing to risk everything on a desperate gamble. Permission granted, Captain, she replied. And Maya, thank you. As the inevitable limped toward the station, its hull scared but intact, Lyra began preparing for the real challenge ahead, building a peace that would outlast the fear of humanity's unexpected power. The galaxy would never be the same.